Hello everyone and welcome to the return of our webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that there's lots of you out there listening. We're just having a few technical glitches. We've not done this for a few months, you'll have to bear with us. If you've participated in one of our webinars before, then welcome back. It's really nice to have you on board. And if this is your first time with us, well done. You've made a really good choice, we hope. And I'll be taking you through how everything works very, very shortly. I'm Sue Jones and I'm responsible here at Warrington Voluntary Action for all things volunteer management related, and I'm here today with our technical director and my partner in crime, Chris Huffy.
Hello.
Chris, would you like to say hello? He's saying hello and I'm talking over him. Chris, would you like to say hello again and I won't talk over you?
Hello. Is that better?
That's much better, thank you. I'm sorry about that. You'll have to excuse us, everybody. We're being incredibly professional, but there's a little bit of hint of giddy going on in here because this is all, we're remembering how to do this. And we have a couple of really interesting guests lined up for you who are on your screen and who I will introduce to you a little later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through how this stuff works, because I'm hoping that there's some of you that are new to webinars or at least new to our webinars, so I thought it would be worth just pointing out some of the tools and the technology that's going on here. So what you've got is on the right hand side of your screen you should have a control panel, and really the only bits that you need to pay attention to are the space where you can type questions, and those questions will come through to Chris here, and he'll be able to collate those for when we're having the discussion. There's also a comment section, and you can comment on there, but it's worth pointing out that if you do that, then everybody can see your comments, so just bear that in mind. I'm hoping that we're going to get some questions from participants today. I'm really hoping that you've come ready with your questions and that you're ready to share your comments and your reflections as we go along. So there'll be opportunity for you to do that. And if you want to speak, then what you need to do is you need to press the hand icon, which is there on your panel on the right hand side, and that lets Chris know that you are caller on the line basically, and that you'd like to come on air and chat with us. If you're tweeting, and we hope that you are, we've set up a hashtag for today's webinar, and it's really original. It's WVA webinar, and what we've decided is that we're going to use these for all our future broadcasts. So you'll always be able to find out what's going on, even if you can't actually take part live. The other thing to say is that these broadcasts are being recorded, and we will upload a playback of them, so that you can listen to them at a later date should you wish to do that, or you can share them with your colleagues and with your networks, because that's what today is all about. So hopefully you're sitting comfortably and you're all raring to go, and what we'd like to do is just to make sure that there are some people actually there and that I'm not talking to myself. We'd like to try out our first poll of the session. So some of you will have taken part in a poll before. It's just for fun and it's completely anonymous, and we've got just about 2 or 3 of these popping up. We've got a question for you coming up, and there's a choice of responses. So what we'd like to do is just please select the one that you most identify with. So that should be coming up on your screen in a moment. So it should say, I signed up for this webinar today because I wanted to find out more about this webinar stuff. Or it may be that you're brand new in volunteer management and you're looking to make connections, or you're looking to get more involved in the volunteer management networks. And I can see that you're already taking part in that, which is fantastic. So we've got those responses coming in. And if you haven't already voted, if you'd like to do so, and then we'll close the poll. Nearly all of you have, because we've got the text to be able to see that. Okay, we're going to close the poll, and the results tell us that it's fairly split actually. 29% of you each want to find out more what this is about, and you're brand new to volunteer management. So that's really, really interesting. So thank you and well done for joining us. Really excited that we've got some new people on board. And 43% of you, so quite a big chunk of you are actually looking to get more involved in the networks. So I know, seen from the, I was going to say I've seen from the cast list, but we're not actually performing, aren't we, Chris? I've seen from the attendance sheet, I should say, that maybe you are the cast list. We're all here. We're all taking part. We're all actors here. And I've seen that I recognise quite a lot of the names on the list. So it's good to know that people want to do even more where this stuff's concerned. Right, so I'm going to talk for a little bit longer, and then we'll have our first guest for you, so you can hear from him and hopefully ask some questions as well. What I would like to talk to you about really is the title of the session. I named it Connecting, Learning and Sharing, because more than ever this is what we need to be doing in our roles. And I'll expand more and more on why in a minute. But what I wanted to say first of all really is that the good news about this is that volunteer managers are already really great at connecting, learning and sharing. And if you're new to volunteer management, then feel reassured that you're joining a really, really exciting, effective network and an emerging profession, which is something for us all to think about. And the reason why I say that we're already really good at this stuff is because I've been running network events and training events and learning, facilitating learning for volunteer managers for a long time now. And what I always find is that people do this naturally when they come together face to face. They want to share, they want to find out each other's experiences. Sometimes they want to have a good old moan as well, but the idea is that we move on from that and we look at what we can do with the learning that we've put into place. What we need to think about, though, is that we can extend those activities much more. So we have access to online platforms, tools and resources, and because this stuff's more freely available, on the one hand we could say, oh, it's sort of more stuff to fill up my day, and therefore, you know, I need to kind of set time aside to think about it. But actually, what I'd like you to do is to think about that in a much more positive way, and to see it as an extension of the face-to-face networks that we already take part in. These tools and resources have become more freely available, and this has simply extended the opportunity to take you beyond your usual groups and beyond your geographical places. So we're not suggesting for a minute that the online stuff needs to replace face-to-face. It's all about everything working together to complement one another to support you in your role. But to participate effectively, we need to understand a little bit more about networking and how that works. And we need to recognise that it is, in fact, a key skill. Okay, and what I find traditionally when I bring this up with people is that it can create an uncertainty and a feeling of apprehension, sometimes for the following reasons. Sometimes we think networking is associated with approaching complete strangers at an event and having to start to talk about yourself. By networking, we might think that other people mean that they're going to come and try and get things from you, things that maybe you don't really want to share, and so you might view it a little bit suspiciously. You know, and as I've said already, in voluntary sector circles, networking is sometimes associated with simply getting together to have a good old moan, which doesn't really move you forward. So I can see why the word networking can be a little bit of a barrier for people. But we need to think about this stuff in different ways, because it's okay to think about what you want to gain from networking, but what I also want you to do is to think about what you can offer. Okay, so these are the themes that we need to sort of take with us. Now, part of networking is about learning, and this is also crucial to help us develop as managers of volunteers. So we're also saying with our title for this session is that it's no longer a top-down approach. And, you know, traditionally opportunities for networking, sharing and learning have been led from within organisations from the top, or perhaps even by support organisations. And the purpose of that has been to meet internal needs, or to upskill the workforce, or to put on events for people. And clearly upskilling is still important, but two things emerge which need to be considered. The first one is, and we know this, organisations don't always know what's best when it comes to learning and development for volunteer managers. I think they're getting there. I think they're starting to listen, and there are some really good examples of organisations that are effectively pulling together. and doing this stuff really, really well. So please don't think I'm bashing organisations needlessly. But in my experience, they don't always place a value on making an investment in learning and development for volunteer managers and supporting the need for them to go out and network. The other thing that we need to think about is that the workplace is changing. And that's not exclusive to the voluntary sector and the community sector. It's changing everywhere, and it requires us to be much more self-directed in the way that we develop and grow and the way that we develop new skills and knowledge. So what does all this stuff mean? And I promise you I'm going to stop talking in a minute and I'm going to hear from our first guest. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to drive this forward, to drive our own learning and development, to connect, to learn and share in the ways that we need to, so that it's beneficial for us as individuals, for our organisations and subsequently our volunteers, let's not forget them of course, and ultimately it's beneficial for the profession as a whole. So in terms of connecting, we need to make the links. We need to think about who or what you want and need to connect with. In terms of learning, this is something I'd really love you all to sort of take away and think about. We can all do volunteer management good practice. That's the easy bit. That's what the guides and the templates and the web resources are all there for. You know, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of that stuff didn't really exist. So we've no excuses now for not taking a good practice approach when we're working with our volunteers. The challenging part is to go beyond the good practice and to truly absorb yourself in what's happening out there, to absorb, to reflect and to do something with your learning, whether we get that from traditional learning, training courses, maybe additional reading and researching what's going on out there, or perhaps more importantly from listening to one another and from learning from each other's experiences. And so we come to sharing. Sharing is a really big part of this, and for me it's the most interesting part. Think about what you have to share, because in many ways this is the new currency. I was at a really exciting training and learning development event yesterday, and all the talk was about no longer with learning particularly, it's about what we provide for people. It's more about the self-directed stuff. It's more about responding to what people tell us that they need. So as a training manager or as a training developer, it's really important to listen to what people are saying. But we can only do that if you're prepared to share. We can only do that if you're prepared to tell us what it is you need. So think about what you have to share. This is what builds credibility and momentum both in the face-to-face and the virtual networks. And the best part is it can reflect your work. So all you're doing is you're sharing what you're learning. It's a great way to contribute and to support other people. And, you know, just in case you're feeling a little bit tentative about this, and you maybe look at other people who are out there and how they're sharing stuff, you don't have to be an amazing blogger or have created some incredible approach for supporting volunteers in your organisation. You just need to share what you're up to, who you're connecting with and what you've learnt about. Because I know from delivering training that that's often the best bit of the coming together. We just need to transfer that principle to what we're doing through all these online networks. So, before we hear from our first guest, who's going to hopefully tell us more about what he's done with a local network and how he's connected online with some different people, and hopefully inspire you, I think he will. Let's do another quick poll to check in what you think about all this stuff we've just been discussing. And I just want to see if anybody's actually listening to me or if we've just decided to go and put the kettle on, which is fine. That's your choice. So we've got another poll coming up for you to participate in. So how are you feeling then about... I think we've... I'm just making sure. I'm making sure I've got the right poll coming up.
Have we not?
I think it might be my mistake, actually. It is my mistake. Chris is shaking his head at me. I did have a poll for you, but I didn't tell him about it, so therefore I'm not able to present it on the screen. So, you know, there's learning for me. But I'm sharing, so it's okay. Here's some questions for you to think about yourself. and you can put your hand up whilst you're sitting there, and we'll, you know, telepathically connect with one another. Are you thinking, after all that, it sounds like more work? Hope not. Are you thinking, I'm quite interested in all this, but I'm not really sure what to do next? Or are you feeling quite excited by it, quite energised by it, because this is exactly what the profession really needs? So if you're on Twitter, or if you want to drop us an email, you can tell us the answer to that. Or if you want to message Chris. He knows what he's doing, and clearly I don't. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to hear from our first guest. So I'm going to ask Chris to enable Addam to join us. Hello, Addam, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Addam. Yes, we can hear you. It's a little bit quiet for me, so I don't know if you can speak a little bit louder.
Me speak a little bit louder? No, it's not possible. I'm quite quiet. How's that for you? Is that better?
You sound like you're in a tunnel, but hopefully our participants can hear okay. I'm sure that they'll let us know if not. I'd like to welcome Addam Merali-Hosiene, who is volunteer manager at Barnardo's, and Addam's contact details are on the screen if you'd like to contact him. Welcome, Addam. Tell us a bit about you. How long have you been working in volunteer management?
Right, so I work for Barnardo's now. I've only worked for Barnardo's for about a month. I've been in volunteer management for about 10 years, and I've in 4 different organisations, so Cancer Research UK, then V, and then after that I was at the British Science Association, and now here I am at Barnardo's.
Fantastic. And I've known you for a few years, but I haven't seen you around for ages. And then all of a sudden you seemed to pop up and you began getting really involved in some of the online networks. What happened to instigate that for you?
Well, basically what it was that I think actually when I started off doing volunteer management, I saw it as a job. It was something that paid the bills. And maybe about, maybe 3-4 years ago when I was working for V, was a time where it clicked that this was actually what I was really passionate about and what I wanted to make into a career. And therefore, leading on from that, when I got more involved in the networks and saw the type of people that were out there, the type of people that I wanted to get involved with, that made me in turn become maybe want to become a little bit more involved in different types of events.
I see. No, I like what you're saying there about, you know, initially it was a job, and then you started to see the possibilities. And
well, I think sorry, I'm talking of you now.
No, it's fine. I deserve it. Go on, it's fine.
I was just going to say, because I think you mentioned it before as well when we're talking about volunteer management and just the presence of networks which maybe weren't there 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think when I started, it probably wasn't maybe seen as much of a career as it is now. It has become so much more professionalised and it's got so much more of a presence that in turn obviously makes more people want to do it, and it kind of inspires me in that way to want to be a part of that and the growth of that.
Yes, I think you're right, because I mean obviously I've been doing this for a while now and I've really seen things change. I've really seen, I keep referring to it as an emerging profession, because I think that's where it is, and I think there are people who've been doing this a lot longer than I have who get very frustrated with where we are. But actually, it's almost as though that there is something happening now where things are starting to be pushed through, and I'm seeing a lot more younger people coming into it where their expectations are a lot higher, and they really are seeing it as a proper profession, which is very, very exciting. And going back to the networking, I noticed that you began connecting with lots of volunteer managers via Twitter in particular, and your Twitter, what's the right word, Chris? Is it Twitter address, Twitter at?
Username?
Username, that's a bit cool. Handle, I like handle. Your Twitter handle, anybody knows what the proper term is? Honestly. Sorry, we do what we're doing here, I promise. If anyone knows what the proper handle is, just let us know. But your Twitter handle is on the screen, And that was a very long-winded way of explaining that to people. What I was interested to find out was, were you already an established tweeter at this point?
No, not at all. I'd signed up to Twitter because I thought it was the cool thing to do, maybe a year or so before.
It's cool in volunteer management to be on Twitter, definitely.
Well, yeah, but I've not actually engaged with it in that way. I think in my first year, I've managed to get through about maybe 10 or so tweets within the year, because I joined and then just forgot about it. But actually, quite handily at the time, as I said before, when I was getting more involved in the networks, was also the time when I started a new job and I took over the responsibility for their Twitter profile. So at the same time, I was becoming more introduced to that as a part of the role, and therefore getting more used to it on a more personal level as well.
I see. And I think one of the things that, when I talk to people about Twitter is that, people often sort of sign up for it and then they might leave it for a while before they actually do something with it. I noticed that a lot. I think I actually did that myself. And it's almost kind of like you have to find a reason for it. And those of you that haven't maybe sort of discovered Twitter or decided what you think about it, actually using it in this capacity, in a professional development and networking capacity, is a really good reason to sort of take it up, to be honest, and at least have a bit of a go with it. So how did you set about connecting with people, Adam? How did you know who to follow, for example? Because that's a question I get asked. How do you know what to do? How do you know who to start following? What did you do?
Well, I think for a lot of people who know me know that I am maybe a little bit of a technophobe. So I think, the fact that even I understand it is hopefully an encouragement to other people. But in terms of knowing who to follow, it's actually, Twitter is a lot easier than I expected, because you've got a search function on there, so you can type in a word like volunteer, or if you know a particular name of a particular person, people who are big in the sector, and you can type that name in. And also as well, it's once you know certain people, people like Sue, people like Bob Jackson, Emma Corrigan, I could go on for ages, but people who are really frequently participating in networks, you also know that they will be following key people. So you just look at who they're following and basically steal their friends.
Yeah, so it's kind of like and it's quite nice, isn't it, to go and have a nose and see who other people are following. I quite like doing that. And then you can kind of pick the ones that look interesting and create your own, your own set of people to follow.
Yeah, I think it is the kind of worth remembering, rather than just clicking on absolutely everyone. It's always worthwhile to have a think about which people might be more relevant to your sector. And I tend as well is to have a look at things after a few months, and I'll go through the list, and I think that if maybe it's some people, you're not hearing from them, or the tweets are slightly separate from the work that you do, then you can stop following them.
Yes, I think it's part of this, actually, first of all thinking, what am I going to use it for, who am I going to follow, how am I going to connect, but then it's a learning tool in itself, isn't it, because then you start to realise the potential with it and what you're actually getting out of it, what you're giving with it, and then you can you can edit it, if you like, to suit the route that you've decided to go down. And there are people that quite successfully combine the personal and work-related stuff, actually. So it can be done. It's just that obviously if you're tweeting about work things and you're representing your organisation, you really, really need to consider that. So I think what's really interesting for me, Adam, is about what happened next with you, because from the outside looking in, it seemed to me that you'd begun really chatting with individuals, and the next thing you'd arranged a face-to-face meetup, and this group had been created, but the group itself seemed to come together online, and then the meeting took place in the real world, which I just find that really, really fascinating. Is that actually how things develop?
In a way, I'll just briefly kind of paraphrase it in that I met up with someone who I was networking with on Twitter, who I had worked with before in a previous job. Twitter brought us back together. We went for a cup of tea, for a catch-up, to get out of the office, and then we found out that we were just talking a lot about different issues in volunteer management that affected us. We decided to do it again, and then decided that when we do it again, that there's no reason why we shouldn't just invite more people along to do, to just catch up in an informal environment. But when the topic is the one thing that we all have in common, i.e. volunteer management, and therefore, the opportunity to talk about best practice, to share ideas or suggestions, is what came up from that. And it was then just a really simple thing to do, of just choosing a date and a time and telling people about it, and telling people to tell other people. I think you mentioned before that the online networking is not replacing face-to-face. So I think having these face-to-face meetings is a good way of just reaffirming that, basically, and showing people that, if they do want to go and bounce an idea off a person rather than an email address or a Twitter twandle, as Chris has called it, or something like that.
We're going to get it trending, I think.
I think so. But, I mean, just finally as well, I think you mentioned before, now, rather than having the top-down approach, it's the opportunity for us as volunteer managers to drive things forward. And I don't think at any point I could ever take, all of the credit for setting up this network, because it was quite clear that other volunteer managers said, yeah, this would be a really good idea. So that provided the, the motivation to do it. One of my colleagues as well, who I met up with originally, also drove it forward. So it's, it's definitely something for the volunteer managers have led it.
Excellent. I think what's interesting as well is that I understand that there's a plan of Manchester tea shops going to be in order. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that just a
yeah,
rumour?
I'm well known amongst my friends, and hopefully now amongst the volunteer management community, for and also my colleagues as well, for just having a very in-depth knowledge of Manchester tea shops and where you can get your best scones and cakes from. So I already have potential venues for the next 6 meetings mapped out, and all different ones. And I think maybe as well as blogging about the actual event afterwards, we should maybe also have some kind of cake feedback, just to support other volunteer managers who might want to go for cake in the future.
I think this sounds brilliant. You could even, you could do promotion and get sponsorship from the tea shops, or maybe they'll provide you with, free tea and cake. Who knows where it can take you? The possibilities are always endless. How would you say then that this sort of networking differs from like a more specific organised get-together led by perhaps one of the infrastructure organisations, for example? The traditional volunteer managers or volunteer coordinators network meeting. What's different, would you say, about what you're doing here, or are there any differences?
I think there are, and I think the network that we've got here is something that can complement the more traditional volunteer coordinated network. You mentioned before that it's no longer a top-down approach, so you've got to have networks that enable people who are doing the work on the ground to talk about the things that are important to them. And I find that sometimes in the more traditional networks, that actually wasn't happening. It was more along the lines of, and it's understandable because these networks are funded networks, and they are set up, and obviously they've got to report back to funders about results and outcomes and outputs, so that there always has to be much more of a structure to it. And quite often I go along to these events, and I think that if the specific particularly of interest to me or to anybody else, then you're not gaining that much from it. And I found that what I was gaining most from was the lunch, not because of the food, but because of the opportunity to talk with other people and find out about maybe projects that they've started up and ways in which they've engaged with volunteers, and looking at how we can share those ideas and best practice.
So it's actually the principle of the informal conversation, which is kind of what you've then replicated with the group, that's the bit that you actually find the most valuable. So it's a bit like what I was saying before, if nobody was listening at all, in the presentation part about, we can put stuff on for you as organisers or as trainers or as facilitators, but actually often the bit that you get the most from is the natural kind of coming together, because we're naturally curious, aren't we? And if we find common ground, people will share, they will feel comfortable to do that, and they will talk about what they're doing. So it's almost kind of like you replicated the principles of the best bits of the traditional kind of idea of a network. And please, everybody, please don't think, I work in an infrastructure organisation, I deliver training and facilitate networks all the time. I'm not suggesting for a minute that there's no value in that. I think what I'm interested in is the shift and this idea that people coming together can drive things themselves, to complement anything else that might be happening that's organised. And this is what I'd like us to get our heads around, really. So what's next for your group, Addam? Do you have plans to meet up again soon? And how can anybody get involved in that if they're interested?
Yeah, we do have, basically when we met the first time, one thing I did once we all, towards the end when we finished our chapter, I asked the people that were there what they thought really in terms, because as I say, I want to be a network for volunteer managers. So I asked them what they thought. We're looking at maybe doing it quarterly. So I've just started a new job, so in that whole kind of hecticness of the first month, that's all gone by in a bit of a blur. So my plan is towards the end of this week or maybe next week, look at the diary, put a date in for some time in June, and then get around to spreading the word. I have to say that because the last one was done at a relatively short notice, the actual promotion of it is something that I think I really want to work on more, because I think there's the people that are engaged in these networks who would find out about it, but there's plenty more volunteer managers out there who aren't. So any way that people can try to spread the word is always good. In terms of people finding out about it, Chris has pointed out, because I hadn't noticed as well, that my twangle is slightly wrong. I've got two N's.
It's very wrong, and and I know that that's a sensitive issue for you, and I kind of, it's a big no-no. I kind of, I'm really, really sorry.
It's absolutely fine. Normally people miss out one of the D's rather than one of the M's. It's just me being awkward. But Chris has put the correct one on the chat board, and also my email address. And also for those of you who are involved with TT Volunteer Managers Club for Thursdays, last time I put out the information about that with that hashtag. And yeah, just email me if you're interested, or follow me on Twitter, or find me in a Bernardo's somewhere nearby. There's loads of ways. I think if you're involved in this if you're involved in this webinar now, then the chances are that you will be in the right network to be hearing about the next event when it happens.
And if someone's from outside of the Manchester area, they're welcome to come along, aren't they, if they happen to be in town?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't see it. The only reason why it is a Manchester Volunteer Managers Network is because this is where I'm based, and that makes it easier. But for anybody who happens to be visiting or passing by, I want to drop in and chat, because the volunteering management arena is blessed with such a diverse range of people. So the more people we can get in, and the number of different people that can come into that, is the more best practice and ideas and suggestions that can be shared. But also as well, above and beyond that, is I have to say that when I say setting up the meetings was a case date, picking a venue, and then telling everybody about it. And you might think that sounds a little bit simple, but that's exactly how it was, because you rely on the people that come along to lead the discussion. So even if people aren't in Manchester and might not be in Manchester on the day, there's nothing stopping them from, you know, maybe talking to a couple of other volunteer managers in their local area, and setting up something similar, because you know, we can just take over the country with volunteer manager networks in tea shops up and down the land.
I like the sound of that. I'm hoping that people, maybe in their local area, if they're feeling a little bit inspired, to get together with people. And like you say, people can contact you, and it's on the Twitter handle is Addam with 2 M's before the H. I do apologise about that. We will make sure that from the broadcast, lots of things that we mention, links, a playback and a recording of this and the slides, and everything will become available to all of you. So we'll make sure that we triple check all those spellings, etc. I've got a couple of questions coming in for you, Addam, if you're up for answering those.
Yeah, not a problem.
Brian is asking, how do you get people to follow you, because following other people doesn't always lead to more followers for yourself. So obviously you having a certain amount of followers has been relevant, you know, for you being able to spread the word. But how did you get to that point?
I find that if you slip them a fiver, it usually works.
How do you do that virtually?
It's called PayPal. It works.
Of course.
No.
Not that we're promoting PayPal specifically.
Yeah, no, not at all. Other money transfer services are available. No, in a serious matter, it's one thing that I almost found a little bit, maybe not frustrating, but at the start I was thinking, why aren't more people following me? And it's the case of, you know, you get involved and then people soon realise about, you know, what you're saying, and that they want to pay attention to that, and getting involved in the different networks as well, and if, you know, being a regular contributor to those, you know, if the other regular contributors start to follow you, staying in touch with relevant news, also, you know, also helps, because, you know, if you're talking about that, and, you know, when I say relevant news to the volunteer management sector, you're talking about that, and then people think, oh, okay, well, you know, I'll start following this person because they have opinions that I'm interested to hear. So you know, maybe at the start it can be a little bit, and maybe it's me just on a personal level thinking, oh, well, I haven't got more followers, but don't see it in that way, because after a while it just starts to grow, and one of your followers may retweet you, as in, you know, repeating the message that you've sent out to their followers, and then some of their followers will follow you, and then it just starts to grow, and now I actually don't bother looking at the numbers thing at all, because, as I said before, when, as well as being kind of selective about the people you follow, you've got to see it as kind of the quality side rather than the quantity side. So if you've got 20 followers, if you've got 20,000 followers, I'd have somewhere in between, by the way, then you've got to look at what you're able to provide to them, basically.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, because for me, I mean, I'm on Twitter, and I've been on Twitter a while, and it really isn't about the numbers at all. And I think, to answer Brian's question, it's a reciprocal thing, and I think you mentioned, Addam, there about retweeting, and I think this is where we can start to contribute and support one another. So one of the things we're going to show you later on is how you can find out who are some of the sort of key people that are tweeting around volunteer management stuff. And you know, and there are some lists that have been produced. Rob Jackson's produced quite a few lists within his own Twitter about volunteer management people that you can follow. So, you know, it's about sort of looking at what's out there and making that information useful to you, but then sort of sharing it about with others. And I think slowly but surely the momentum actually starts to build. So there isn't a formula for it, really. And I like that about it. I like that it's dependent on, you know, a goodwill and the connections you make and the quality of those conversations that you're having. Because for me, it feels like there's a lot more authenticity about it.
Definitely, and I think what Chris has said there as well actually is a really key point, is to see it as a two-way street on Twitter.
Yes.
So if somebody sends you some information, if say hi, say thanks to them, find out a little bit more about what they do, you know, because I think some people might just lurk on there waiting for, you know, the life-changing moment to happen, but if you make it a two-way street, then that really important nugget of news that you're looking for, you're more likely to come by it if you're actually engaging in dialogue rather than just following.
Chris is signalling to me to tell me that that wasn't his comment, actually, even though he has commented. Oh. It's a comment from Emma.
Sorry.
So no, don't. It's fine. No, it's so he just wants to make sure that Emma gets credited with that. Okay, so we've got some more questions. No, we don't have any more questions. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Somebody was asking about networks in other places earlier on, it was a question from Stephen, who's particularly interested in if there's anything happening in Merseyside. And I think what I would say to that is get some people together, you know, get sort of tweeting and find out what volunteer managers sort of want in Merseyside and see what's happening. Or, you know, come and join us over in Manchester. Get on the train and see what's happening there and come and join one of Addam's sessions. Although I know you don't want to call it sort of your network, Addam, do you? You're quite clear about that before, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, there's nothing to stop people from setting this stuff up themselves. We have got somebody as well who's put their hand up. Richard, I'm going to sort of, hopefully you're going to say hi to us. I don't know if you've got a question for Addam. Hi, Richard.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Very quick, thank you very much for putting this webinar on. It's been really interesting. Yes, I'm just wondering if anybody has got any examples of their volunteers getting involved. Many of my volunteers are very nervous of this sort of technology, and I suppose it might be about their age or generation. If people could share that, it might help us.
Well, I actually think that's a really good question, and I think in a way, Richard, if it's all right for me to say this, I think it's in a way it's kind of like a separate topic, although it's clearly related, but setting up sort of this kind of network for your volunteers is brilliant and a really good idea, and there are some examples of where people are doing that. So I'm wondering whether that's something we could sort of do as a follow-up, or if people have got any comments about that or any examples that they want to share, they can do that via the screen or via Twitter. Or, Richard, have I misunderstood your question, and were you meaning for kind of volunteers to get involved alongside the volunteer managers? What did you mean by your question? Did I understand you correctly?
Well, I've got volunteers who are geographically very, very spread out, but they might have similar interests. I work for an international charity here, and they might be interested in what's going on in, say, Mali at the moment. If I could get them tweeting about that and feed information in that way, I think it could make a huge difference.
Right. Richard, I'm really sorry, but I'm having real trouble hearing you. I don't know so I apologise if everyone else can hear you. I'm just wondering if maybe you and I should have a follow-up conversation after the session, or we can arrange to have a chat, and we'll see. It might be a good subject to put on for a future webinar, actually. You know, we could think about how do we get our, once we're kind of understanding this, and once we're getting our heads around what we want to be doing for us as professionals, then actually how can we extend that to our volunteers. So if it's all right with you, I will follow up with you about that. Is that okay? Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much for coming on the line. Have we got any more questions, Chris? No more questions. Okay. Addam, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, just to reiterate that it's really easy to set up. So I think it would be great to see other volunteer managers do it, and if they've got any questions, just to get in contact. You know, I will email back to say, yeah, it's really easy. You know, I'll give a little bit more information on that, but you know, any advice they want, I'm more than happy to give, because it is as easy as I keep on saying it is.
Fantastic. And I just wanted to say that I know you've started a blog to follow up from your experiences, and that you're going to sort of update your blog after each of the meetups, aren't you, to sort of unpack what you talked about and to let people know how that's developing, because I think the story behind it is really, really interesting. And you're blogging on Ivo, which I'm going to show people in a minute for those of you that aren't familiar with Ivo. So I'll be able to highlight where people can find that, and I'll make sure that we send the links out to it as well for people. We'll be tweeting it, if nothing else. Addam, thanks ever so much for joining us. It's been really, really interesting hearing from you, and I really hope that people are feeling a little bit inspired from listening to you, and just from sort of knowing that, you know, we could just go and do this stuff ourselves. We don't need someone to organise it for us. It's just a case of wanting to do it, being bothered to do it in some ways, and prioritising it, you know, in our day, because I think we're really pushed for time, we're really busy, and kind of going off to a tea shop at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock might seem like a bit of a luxury, but we need to invest time in ourselves, because if we do that, then we're in a better place to support our volunteers, I think. So well done, Addam, and thanks ever so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Okay, so hopefully you found that interesting, everyone. I'm not sure, we have got another guest lined up for you later, but I understand he's having some tech problems. No, he's not. I needed not to have told you about that at all, because, yes, anyway. Oh, dear me. I want to share with you some of the tools that will help get you started with some of this stuff. Now, we don't have tons of time, and I thought it was more important, really, to listen to what our guests had to say, because I think for me that's much more interesting in terms of the broadcast. The other stuff you can go away and you can look up, and we will send you links through for these things. But from a kind of a starting point, some things I want to draw your attention to if you're not already using these are the things that fundamentally you need to be accessing. Okay, so the first one is the UK VPM's Yahoo group, which is over 10 years old, which was set up by Rob Jackson, and it's a very traditional kind of, in many ways nowadays, sort of an old style networking group online, and I'm sure that you'll all be on there, and if you're not, then you can sign up for that by just doing a search under Yahoo groups for UK VPMs, which stands for UK Volunteer Programme Managers. And really the thing about UK VPNs that I really wanted to get across is that it works in the form of email notifications. So, you know, people say really simple things to me like, but I don't want to get loads of emails in my inbox. You don't have to. You can sign up for a daily digest or a weekly digest. You just go into your settings and you click the relevant button for that. The other thing to say about UK VPNs is don't be a lurker. Okay, now I know that sounds a little bit, you know, it's not a very nice word, but what I mean by that is that there's lots of people, and there are studies into this with social networking, that, you know, percentages, someone will tell me what the percentages are, but there are percentages of people that will just kind of go on there, be very, very passive and just look at what's going on. You know, and in one way you can argue that that's a way to interact with it. But going back to what we were saying earlier, going back to our themes of kind of moving this stuff forward, where are you contributing in that example? Okay, so you can contribute by posting up questions, and if you're particularly new to volunteer management, it's a great place to get all your questions answered, because people love talking about what they do. So there will be people on there that want to share. There's also a great archive on UK VPMs that you can troll through, because chances are if you're asking that question, someone has already asked it before. So that's a very, very quick sort of example of how you can use that. LinkedIn is more of a sort of a, I suppose, different to Facebook, because it's much more of a professional networking tool. And, you know, if you're serious about your professional life, you really need to be on LinkedIn. It's as simple as that. So as somebody that kind of is on LinkedIn but doesn't use it very much, though, I have to hold my hands up because I'm much more of a tweeter. I need to link those two things together. the great thing about LinkedIn is that you can really start to consolidate, you know, your achievements, your learning. You can even kind of look at your volunteering. You can capture that in there. And it's a great way, I think, putting together your LinkedIn profile is a great way to start to sort of look at, you know, where you are in terms of your professional development and where you might want to head next. So it gives you a good reason to sit down and actually think about those things. Again, think about, how do I want to use this? It's in a public arena. What do I want to say on there? You know, people in your organization can look you up. Potential employers can look you up. So these are all the sorts of things that you need to consider in terms of what you share. But the other good thing about LinkedIn, and that I'm noticing at the moment, is there are some really good sort of voluntary sector and volunteer management groups popping up on there. And there's quite an interesting one that's being run by Kate Hodge from The Guardian Voluntary at the moment. So there's some quite interesting and challenging questions being posed on there. So you can just do a search for LinkedIn, set up a profile there, and you know, you just start to kind of build it slowly. Make sure you upload a photograph though. I'm always amazed by people that have a LinkedIn profile with no photograph. You really, really need to, you know, and maybe your photograph on LinkedIn is different from your photograph on Facebook or your photograph on your Twitter. These are all the little nuances and the little details that people will take notice of. Okay, the other website that's on there is the newly launched IVO, which was formerly iVolunteer. And what that does is that gives you opportunity to blog and share your experiences if you want to do that. Or you can just read other people's. You can find people to follow on there, a little bit like the principle of Twitter. And they now do this really great weekly digest where they sort of tailor items that they think you might be interested in finding out about. Now, I'm going to try and do a fancy thing with my computer here to take me to IVO. Oh, wow. Yes, that really did not work in the rehearsal. So I'm sharing all my secrets here with you, you know how rubbish I am at this stuff. So here's an example of IVO. And if we just do a little bit of a tour around, and hopefully that's coming up on your screens now. I'm just going to go to the home page. Now I'm actually logged in with my login here. So it brings me sort of the stuff that's happening with me at the moment. And over here on the right hand side that you, oh no, you can see it properly on your screen, it's just on my screen, it's covered up. This is where you would create a profile when you very, very first log in. But we can have an explore of the tabs at the top here, and I'm always particularly interested in the blog posts that come up. And there's quite a lot of activity happening with the blog posts at the moment. So what's really great about IVO is that we are seeing perspective from both volunteer managers and volunteering organisers and organisations, but we're also getting the perspectives of volunteers. So it's a great place where volunteers and volunteer managers can hang out together. And there are people on here from all over the place. Here's Liza Face, who I connect with on Twitter, and she's in Oregon in the USA, and she's actually going to be doing one of our Thoughtful Thursday tweet chat blogs that's coming up in a few weeks' time. But she's started to do a little bit of blogging on here. She's just discovered IVO. So there's an example, and we've also got Addam's blog is on here. Networking Inspiration and my first ever blog post. Okay, so if you wanted to follow up, you can do a search up here for people. I don't know if, yes, that is being pointed out on the screen, that's good. And so you can read all in detail about Addam's experiences, and this is where he'll be blogging. And you can follow Addam, and so you'll get a notification that will tell you when he's done his latest blog. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do with IVO was to show you a little bit about how the Thoughtful Thursday tweet chat works. So now I've lost my place from where I was before, but it's okay, because I'm going to find it in a very cool, calm and collected way. And I'm going to keep talking to you all at the same time. Here it is. Here's the lovely Brian Lynch, aka Antisocially Constructed, who provided the most fantastic blog piece for last week's Thoughtful Thursday tweet chat. Now, those of you who might have been hearing about Thoughtful Thursday, just to tell you a little bit about it, we started it back in October last year, and it was an initiative that was led by a fantastic group of people that I work with who are all real live volunteer managers who are based all around the country. There's about 12 of them, and they're volunteer management champions. So they're all people that I kind of connected with and identified to help us big up the profession, start doing some writing, and start talking about some of this stuff in an open arena. And there are also people who are doing a lot of things locally in their networks to challenge some of the issues that volunteer managers face. So they're doing a lot of things at local level and internally within their organisations, and I'm encouraging them all more and more to blog and share about that. But what we do with the Thoughtful Thursday, and what we came up with, was we were noticing on Twitter that there are these things called a tweet chat. And there's lots and lots of different ones happening, but from a learning perspective, I thought this would be a great idea for people to share what they've been doing and for us to focus on maybe a weekly topic. So what we do with the tweet chat, and I'm trying to find the instructions, but because Brian had the record number of comments for a Thoughtful Thursday, I'm having to scroll down to the bottom. We use, hopefully you can see that, we use the hashtag here, TTVolManagers. Okay, so the hashtag is the Americans use it as a symbol for numbers, I think, don't they? Chris is nodding at me. He knows about that stuff because he's sciencey, not like me. I'm just fluffy. Words and people. But yes, so you put the hashtag in front of it, and if you're on Twitter you can do a search for loads of different hashtags. You know, loads of things are trending with hashtags at the moment. Some of them are a little bit bizarre, so I'm not recommending that you follow those. But from a volunteer management perspective, every Thursday, if you put this into Twitter, then you will see what's going on. But the best place to find out about what's happening with volunteer management Thoughtful Thursdays is on Ivo, and also another place I'm going to share with you a little bit later on. So how it works basically is, let's see if I can get back up to the top of the page. We have a blog post. Sometimes we have guest bloggers, sometimes I blog, and that provides us with our theme, if you like. That's our focal point, and we're open to suggestions for what you'd like us to talk about and discuss on Thoughtful Thursday. But be warned, if you come up with an idea, I might ask you to blog about it because I might feel like it would come better from you. Now, if you really don't want to, that's absolutely fine, but it's a good way to get you started if you're interested in doing a little bit of blogging. And some of the people that have provided Thoughtful Thursday blogs recently, it's been their very first blog. So if you're tentatively thinking about doing that, it's maybe a way in for you. So I'm happy to take suggestions about it. But I am all booked up to July. So, you know, you have to get in there if you want to feature before the end of the summer. Now, how it works is basically we provide our blog. Brian's is a particularly extensive one, which was brilliant because lots of people really engage with it. But it can be short and sweet. It doesn't have to be as long as this. If you're looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have that much to say. This is a very creative piece that Brian did actually around the Eurovision Song Contest, but we won't get into that because there's no time. You need to look it up and read it if you're interested. But how it basically works is the blog's there, and then there's comments boxes at the bottom of Ivo for you to be able to join in the conversation. Okay, so these are all examples of people sharing their thoughts, sharing their ideas. So not only do you have the resource of the blog itself, we also have the content and the contributions from everybody else. Now, this was a bit of a fun one that we did this particular week, you know, but as always with Thoughtful Thursday and with volunteer management, there is, you know, always an underlying serious message. So sometimes we focus on some of the heavier issues. You know, we've had stuff around risk. We had one a few weeks ago around involving ex-offenders in volunteering. That was a really, really interesting debate. When I blog, I tend to blog about sort of professional development stuff, networking, learning, but we've also had people blogging about, you know, stuff that they've been doing in their local area. So it's a great way for you to sort of connect and find out what's happening. if you're not a fan of Twitter or you really don't want to go on Twitter, this is a great place for you to still make a contribution, because you can sign up for an Ivo account and you can share your thoughts on here. So it's a really nice way to sort of take that first step, if you like, because not only can you get a sense of what's going on by reading what other people are doing, you can also tentatively make that first contribution and see how that goes. And then people will start to follow you, and then the whole reciprocal thing that we were talking about before will start to happen. Okay. If you're a tweeter, though, you can use the hashtag, and the challenge is to get your comments in 140 characters or less. And I know for some of you that like to kind of share your thoughts in a long-winded way, like me, for example. Twitter's a real great challenge because it helps you be really succinct. It helps you really think about, actually, what is it I really, really want to say. So it's a good challenge for you. Okay. I've done a bit of a whistle-stop tour there around some of the networks, and we've got another website to show you in a little while. There are other things out there as well. We're not saying this is a definitive list, but I'm just wondering how you're feeling about this, whether you're feeling as though, yes, I understand a little bit more about maybe how to get involved with the online networks. So we do have a poll that's a real poll that I gave Chris the information for that will come up on your screen in a moment. Yes, that one. I'm just telling Chris which one it is. It's already running, apparently, because we've already run it before. Yes, I know. I really need to pay attention. I do apologise. I'm just talking now and forgetting that there may be kind of 30-odd people out there listening to me, if they're still listening. Okay, so 60% of you now understand how to get more involved with the online networks. And 40% of you want to know a little bit more, which is great because we've got a little bit more for you coming up. Okay, so I'm conscious of time, so I want to move on and introduce you to our next guest. Hopefully he's there. I'm going to introduce David Small. David, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Hello, David. Hi. It's
Hello.
lovely to have you. So David is volunteer coordinator with West Berkshire Libraries. And hopefully I've got his Twitter handle right, and if I haven't, I will change it. But the reason why I wanted David to join us really is because for those of you that are still feeling a little bit unsure, and those of you that are still quite new to what you're doing, I'm thinking that David's going to give you some ideas and inspiration, and because I know David started to sort of blog about his experiences as well. So David, tell us a bit about yourself, and tell us in particular, because I think people will be interested in this, when you started working in the field of volunteer management.
Well, after quite a while after school, I did retail, licensed trade, adult social care, punctuated by university in between, and about 13 months ago I found myself in volunteer management. I transferred between departments of the council. I moved over from adult social care because of the cuts that were happening, and then found myself a home. Yeah, it was April last year.
I see. So it's actually relatively sort of new and just under 12 months.
Yes.
Excellent. So as quite a newcomer to the field, because I mean I found you quite quickly, I think, on things like Twitter and Ivo. It just seemed as though you've made connections and accessed a lot of the resources out there quite easily. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'd say it's not been without its cul-de-sacs, but I think a little bit of confidence and the ability to put yourself out there and start looking at who the movers and shakers are, really, seeing who's posting on Ivo, seeing who's posting on Twitter once I eventually got the hang of it. You start to see little trends, little movements. A lot of these things will nudge you towards people that you might like to follow. So I think by putting yourself in the right places, sitting back and watching for a while, you get a hang of the concept. You get a hang of what is polite to do on Twitter, and a few little nudges in the right direction don't help either.
I like the way that you're describing that about sort of looking at trends and nudges. So it's almost kind of like it's small steps, would you say, in a way?
Definitely. I think you can sit back and watch for a while, as I think you can with any social media, as you were saying. You can lurk, but there comes a time when you've got to take that step in to actually fully access and fully get everything out of the social networks that you can as a volunteer manager.
So the stuff that I've been talking about making that contribution and developing the confidence to do that, does that really resonate with you?
Definitely, definitely. I think it speaks to a point I was at probably about 9 months ago, where it was all still quite new. I was somewhere in transition between actually getting to learn my trade by sites like Volunteering England, certain parts of ISO where I was learning a lot of what other people were telling me. I then got in and started asking questions, and eventually people start asking you, and it becomes a very flat sharing network of people.
Excellent. And a big part of, so how have, sorry, I'm going to read my question properly and put my teeth back in. How big a part have the online tools that we've been discussing played in your support and development for your role in the last 12 months?
I'd say the vast majority of it, really. Being quite isolated as the only person with exclusive or with sole responsibility for volunteering in any part of the council, I've had to look out elsewhere for my professional development, for advice, for developing policy procedure. I have been to training events, but there's quite a deference to a single trainer, which I think you gain a lot more from there not being a top-down approach, it being really led by me, and I can pick and choose the people I want to inform me about what I'm doing.
Oh, have we lost you? Yes,
Hello?
we have. Oh no, we've got you back. Sorry, we lost you for a minute. You were saying
Okay.
about how you can pick and choose and you can be informed. You're informing it yourself. It's a bit like, does it link back with what I was saying earlier about the self-directed sort of approach?
Yes, you get to choose absolutely, and you get to choose a range of opinions. You can go on a training course and you'll hear one or two people tell you what they think is the right thing to do, whereas going online I can get the opinions of people internationally, and you get to learn a lot more that way, certainly I found.
I think that's it. I think, and it's kind of the learning. It sort of trains your brain in a different way. I think because you're seeking, you know, what do I think about that, actually, and you know, kind of, and you're being challenged, which is a positive thing. You know, it's not always about kind of learning the right answer, which is how a lot of traditional training and learning kind of maybe takes place. It's about exploring the issues of the day and thinking about, you know, well, what do I really think about this? Where does this sit with my organisation? How do we want stuff to develop going forward with volunteering? Because volunteering and managing volunteering is actually really, really complex in some ways, because there's so much potential with it. There are lots of things that we haven't found the right answer for, because that answer is particular to what we're doing within our own organisation. So I think this is it. I think this is what you're saying is about, you know, we come with our own kind of questions, and although there's a commonality in terms of basic principles, basic good practice, the rest of it is individual to us. So this is why we have to take that responsibility on board, I think. So what would you say that you get? Well, I think you've answered the question, actually, what you get from these networks that perhaps can't be provided at a face-to-face gathering. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that you haven't already included?
I'd say that as far as the networks I'm a part of, there's an immediacy to it. I can ask a question and get an immediate response. I know a lot of networks, there's a fantastic value in meeting up face-to-face, actually networking with people like that, but at the same time I can ask a question on Twitter and have an almost immediate answer, and I don't have to book a venue, I don't have to arrange transport for everyone. It's there, it's almost permanent.
And is there a local network in your area, did you say? You said you'd attended some training and things, but do they have a sort of a volunteer coordinators gathering going on?
There is a gathering, actually. I was at it last night. But it is infrequent. I don't think we've, you know, it's every couple of months because people can't find the time at the moment, or you know, to pay the overtime for people to go in the evening. So it's something that is very useful, but for its own ends. And it's always great to have local contacts and being able to cross-promote local events. But those are the sorts of people that I have on my work Twitter, as opposed to what I refer to as my personal Twitter account. Right,
I see. So for you, you're making that distinction.
Yes.
So what would you say, David, to someone who's fairly newish to working with volunteers and fairly new into the profession of volunteer management, and who is looking to make connections and network?
I say go for it. Very simply, take the signposts on offer. I'm not going to go without giving away where you're going next. I think that there are places you can go which will tell you these people do a lot of their talking about volunteer management, about volunteer management issues. If you're confident on Twitter enough to look up hashtags, look up WVA webinar, look up Thoughtful Thursday, see who the movers and shakers are, see who the people are posting on those, link to their blogs, link to their IVO accounts, see what they're doing, and if you're posting, you become part of that network.
I was going to say, because then you're feeding that, aren't you, and you're contributing to that, so we all become kind of movers and shakers, if you like, together, and then we can shake things up a bit, sort of with a bigger voice collectively, I think, which is always good. Excellent. Anything else that you'd like to share with us, David, from your experiences?
No, I think I would say pick and choose. Not everything is for everyone. I personally left Facebook behind as part of my local arrangements, but I know that it does work for other people. So pick and choose, find things that work for you, but I think everyone has something to gain from Twitter.
Brilliant. I think that's it. I think it's about having a go with it. I think people need to sort of try it and see if it's for them. I do agree with you that you have to kind of choose your tools, if you like, kind of in terms of social media. What I was also going to add is that I know that you've put together, because I know that you blog in a personal capacity, and you also blog on IVO from time to time as well, and hopefully we're going to be seeing more of that from you. I know that you've put together a sort of a case study, for want of a better way, about your experiences, haven't you?
Yes, that's available through my personal blog, which is Small Minded Thinking, which is on Blogger. But I think I'm going to post that to IVO anyway, so if anyone wants to follow that, I'm Big D Small on IVO, so they can find me that way.
Excellent. So you're Big D Small on Twitter and on IVO, so we can find you with that handle either way. That's excellent. Oh, thanks ever so much for talking with us today, David. We really appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
And hopefully people will start to connect with you that way. And I think I would really, really recommend reading David's blog piece and his case study, because I think you'll find it really interesting, particularly if you're new to this stuff, but for everybody anyway, but in particular if you're new. Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Before you go, honestly, what am I like? We've got a question. Are you still there, David?
Yes, I
am. I'm sorry, forgetting what on earth I'm doing. Have we got a question, Chris? We do. We have a question from Emma. Is she going to come on the line and talk to us? Hello, Emma.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you?
Excellent. I'm really well, thanks. It's going really well. It's not a question, really. It's much more of just sort of a general comment,
okay,
kind of supporting what David's been sharing with us. In terms of social media, I had to really think about sort of putting it in my diary and making an appointment to take action. So it's that thing of, because you've got to go and do that lurking and watching and seeing what's going on. But if you don't pop in maybe once a day, maybe once every other day for 10 minutes and just have a snoop around, it's very easy to not get started. And I think a lot of, like Adam said much earlier on about opening an account a year ago and then never doing anything, I was exactly the same. So it became part of my sort of morning ritual with my coffee, check my news feeds, check my emails, check my phone messages, and just quickly pop onto Twitter and have a look. And I would say to anyone who's kind of new to that kind of activity, to just don't feel guilty about taking that 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and put it in your diary and actually force yourself to do it.
I really like that. I think that's excellent advice. Thank you for sharing that with us, Emma. I think this is part of the issue. I think we don't prioritise ourselves. And anybody that's heard me speak before will just think, oh, here she goes, she's on about this again. But it's because it's true. And we're still doing it, and we perpetuate, this thing that the volunteers are the important aspect of our work, and they are, but you really, really need to focus on you. You need to make time for yourself. You've made time for yourself by coming and listening to this today, which is excellent. So take that as a sort of a step in the right direction, as something to build from. And I love your ideas there, Emma, about, you know, kind of building it into your day so it becomes second nature. You know, checking, seeing what's going on, making a contribution. If you're not sure about doing it every single day, then just join us on Thursday for Thoughtful Thursday, and have that as a way in to see what's going on. Even if you just use Twitter for that and for nothing else, that would be absolutely fine, I would say. Thanks very much, Emma. Anybody else want to join us for a question, or have we got any more questions, Chris? No? No more questions or comments. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so there's a couple of things I just want to share with you before we finish up. Oh no, we do have another question. Oh yes, we've got Caroline. Hello, Caroline, are you there? Hi, Caroline. No, Caroline's not there. Sorry, Caroline, we couldn't hear you if you were there. If you do have a question, if you type it in, then I'll try and pick it up again at the end. So where I want to take you next is something hopefully exciting that Chris and I have been talking about for a long time now. It's giving me a really funny look here. If only you could see his face now. We've been talking about this for a while because we did some work last year, as some of you will know, as part of the European Year of Volunteering, which kind of is what sort of kick-started a lot of this, bringing people together, doing the webinar sessions, doing a lot of blogging, and the creation of the Volunteer Management Champions team. And so I just wanted to share something with you that we've been working on, and it's a website. And before you start thinking, oh my gosh, not another website for us to go and have a look at, it's not going to be like that, we promise, because it's a work in progress. It's definitely not finished, and it probably never will be, and that's okay. One of the biggest things we found with working with volunteer managers last year was in our efforts to try and respond to what volunteer managers were telling us they wanted, we found that a few issues in terms of people being able to scout for resources and access what was out there, but finding them was quite time consuming for people. So you end up missing some stuff, you end up not really knowing what's going on, and if you're new to all this, that was the biggest piece of feedback that I got. Where can I go to look for who to follow on Twitter, what websites I need to be connecting with? Some tips and resources really for starting out as a new manager of volunteers. Now, if you have an active volunteer centre with a network, or with a worker in the volunteer centre who's there to support organisations, obviously you can go to them and you can access that, and I really advocate that. Make use of your volunteer centre, because lots of them aren't there anymore. So please go and do that stuff. But we've created a resource for you here, which, as I say, is going to evolve, it's going to grow, and it's hopefully a place that will get you started in where to go next. Before I show it to you, I want to say a couple of things. This is really, really important. This is not a one-stop shop or some sort of portal. That is not what this is. Okay, we are not advocating that. That is not what we're trying to be here. Okay, so I really, really want to get that across. The best way to think about this is that it's a kind of a signpost. It's your volunteer management signpost. Okay, it's a springboard, a platform that complements all the other things that we've been talking about today. All right, and will hopefully sort of pull some of the resources together. It's very much a work in progress. We're not doing this as part of a particular piece of work, or we're not being funded to do it. It's not, specifically actually even part of our work, but we're doing it because we're really passionate about all this stuff, and we really want to help people and support people to develop. But we need you. We need you to help us to drive it in terms of contributing to it, letting us know what you want to see on it, giving us links to relevant resources that you found, and telling other people about it. And it's also going to provide a base for the Volunteer Management Champions team, for the Thoughtful Thursday blog, because one of the feedback pieces that I've had is that it's hard for people to find where the blog is, because it's coming from different people. So what we'll do is we're still going to use Ivo and the format that we described to you with the comments section, but we'll originate the blog on this new website, and then we'll link through to iVolunteer as well. Hopefully it'll provide us with opportunity for us all to link up even more, and with all the other developments in volunteer management that are happening out there. So I'm going to do this whizzy thing with my mouse, and here it is. Welcome to Volunteer Management Movement. We are championing volunteer management. Okay, so as I said before, it is a work in progress. I'm just going to give you a very, very quick tour, and you can go away and play with it yourself. The URL is at the top there. It's vmmovement.org.uk. And what we've tried to do is provide some stuff on here for you. Now, we've divided it up into some very, very clear sections. We're saying that if you're a new volunteer manager, you might want to have a look at some of the stuff that's in here. If you're looking to develop yourself, so coming at this from a more development perspective, there's some stuff in here you might want to look at. If you're looking to get connected, we've provided you with the list of sort of blogging sites and forums and a description of what they are. Just some examples to get you started, okay? And there's also some stuff about what's happening on Twitter. So we've got some information about who to follow. So that conversation we were having before, who do I follow, where do I start? Here's a list of people for you to get you started. This is not a definitive list. If your name isn't here and you'd like it to be here because you feel that you tweet a lot about volunteer management stuff, then just let us know. Okay. We've got a space here that tells you all about Thoughtful Thursdays. What you'll see here are there are some links which will take you through to different places. We're going to link through to Ivo and the blog post here. There's a big feature about Thoughtful Thursday on Energize website, which is Susan Ellis's website over in the US. But because Thoughtful Thursday has an international feel, she asked me to write a piece for it there. So if you want to find out more about it, have a look at that. Some following stuff for you to do there as well. I want to just quickly share with you a little bit of stuff about the new things that we've put in here. And Chris and I, we're going to pretty this up a bit, Chris, aren't we? Yes. We're going to get some photographs in here, and because it's very kind of text heavy at the moment, so just bear with us with that. But we're trying to sort of give people a bit of a lead in here. So, you know, I've got something here that says linked PDF document because I haven't put the link up, so I apologise for that. You know, we're going to get some more resources uploaded. But we've tried to link to other things that are already happening, such as Volunteer England's Good Practice Bank, how to find your nearest volunteer centre. We flagged up some useful websites that we like, such as WCVA and what's happening down in London with Greater London's resources. If you're in an infrastructure organisation and you think you've got some great resources that you'd like us to link to on here, then you have to let us know. Tons of stuff about networking, okay? And I'm going to just keep adding to it. From the development point of view, I've got loads of resources that I'm planning to sort of add. But this section is about taking you and the profession further and gives you a little bit of a lead in onto why you should be focusing on your development. So it's a lot of information, but I'm planning some stuff around looking at volunteer management, CPD, continuous professional development, and that's a little side project that I'm working on at the moment. So watch this space for some stuff happening on that. But I've put together a piece here on looking at qualifications in volunteer management as an example, and some questions that you might want to ask in terms of study. And also, I've uploaded as an example a presentation that I did earlier on this year at the Association of Volunteer Managers Conference, which might pop up in a minute. It's being a little bit slow. Here we go. So we've got other presentations and other bits of information that we're planning to share. We really, really need you to help us develop it, really. So if you want to feature on here, if you want us to link to your blog, if you want us to link to your resources, if you've got a resource that you think other people would like to know about, it's a movement website. That means two things. It means that it will keep moving, it will keep growing, it will keep developing, it isn't finished, but also it needs you to contribute to it in order for it to grow and develop. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about that for now, because you've got the resource there to go and have a play around with it later on. No, that's not what I wanted to do at all. What did I want to do? I wanted to do that, didn't I? That's good. Okay. One day I'll do one of these broadcasts without chunnering to myself in the background. I do this when I'm training, really, so it's no different. Anybody that's worked with me in the classroom will know that this is what I'm like. So you're either going to love that or you're not going to love that. I'm sorry if you don't. Okay, so finally, connecting, learning and sharing. Any questions, comments or reflections from people? Have we got anything coming in, Chris? Any pearls of wisdom?
I've got positive feedback about VM movement.
Lots of positive feedback about VM movement, apparently. And I know there's been lots of chat happening throughout the whole session, which has been fantastic to see. Has anybody got a question? No? No questions? I think I've got you all talked out, really, haven't I? Because we've been on here for a whole hour and a half. That's an hour and a half of your personal professional development that you've invested in. So well done, everybody. Meet the Queen at Orford Park tomorrow, apparently. We can do that. That's in Warrington. We'll put information out on Twitter about the Queen is coming to Warrington tomorrow, apparently. Fantastic stuff. See, it's all going on in Warrington. We've got a poll before we finish. How could we forget the poll, Chris? It's a real one again as well. Okay, and it's to check in with you really in terms of how you're feeling at the moment. So we're interested to know, are you feeling inspired now to check out some of the tools that we featured today? Are you feeling inspired to participate in Thoughtful Thursday? Create a get-together for your local volunteer managers, or do all of the above? Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, did you fix that? No, Chris or Fee? 100% of you are going to do all of the above. Wow. Oh, that is amazing. That's really made my day. Well done, all of you. Thank you very much. Some contact details on the screen there for how you can follow us to find out what's going on. We're going to be doing one of these every other month, okay? So if you want to tell us about a topic that you'd like us to feature, and the call from Richard earlier gave us a bit of an idea for a starter, we could do with some ideas for that. And our next one, we haven't set a date for it, but we're planning something hopefully during the first week of July. So join us again, please, next time. And thank you so much for your attention this afternoon. Go and tell people about stuff. Go and tell them what's going on. And I hope to see and connect with a lot more of you on Twitter. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.